A very warm welcome, a little bit late, but hopefully you are still interested in this session within the European Resources Forum. After the first very interesting plenary sessions we had already this morning, and especially the opening session, we are now in the first part of the parallel sessions, and I welcome you to session 3 on resource efficiency and sustainable chemistry. To introduce myself, my name is Jutta Klaasen. I'm head of the division Chemical Safety at the German Environmental Agency. And in my division, I work on approval and assessment procedures for all different kinds of chemicals in the frame of national and European regulations and international regulations. For example, for plant protection products, biocides, medicines, industrial chemicals, and all this stuff. Before we start with this session, I would like to start our small live question tool. I will start the first question right now, which is quite simple. The question is, are you aware of the principles of sustainable chemistry? And I ask you kindly to join this tool to give us your answers to this, and we will come back to the results later in this session. I wait a little bit until everybody has answered, and then I will start the second question. I can already read. The second question will be, do you favor an inclusion of negative environmental and social costs of resource use in the price of products and services? Again, the answer is yes, no, or do not know. And I also ask you to answer this little question in the beginning, just a little warm-up to think about sustainable chemistry and what does it mean. Okay. Now we come to the second question. I open the second question. So, in the meantime, I add some other technical advice. After 6 or 7 months of COVID pandemic, I'm sure you are all familiar with chat, with the tool of chat, and I encourage you to submit your questions in the chat during the presentations of Gabriela Eigenmann and Thomas Jackel later. And the questions will be read, and we have time to discuss your questions after the presentations and after our small panel discussion. So please send your question during the presentation already. Okay, so we come to the end of the second vote. That's interesting. Thank you so much. You will get the result, and I'm back on my video. Okay, last technical advice is you can make the picture, you make a full size picture of the presentation or the video as you want. There's a little button on the upper edge of the screen. Okay, so some words to the topic of this session. Sustainable chemistry. I am pretty sure some of you do not exactly know what that is. My dear colleague Klaus Kümmerer from Leuphana University recently titled Sustainable Chemistry is a Future Guiding Principle. And the general definition he gives is chemistry is sustainable if it contributes in a sustainable manner to sustainability. We heard a lot about sustainable development this morning already, and now we have a look what chemistry can contribute to these goals. Today we get some short insights, and we'll discuss how, for example, resource efficiency contributes to sustainable chemistry, what challenges industry and policy has to tackle now and in future. Chemicals and their sound management are cross-cutting issues. Chemicals play important roles for resources, for climate, for health, agriculture, industry, circularity, pollution of all ecosystems, and so on. We find chemicals everywhere. So the Commissioner Sienkiewicz this morning already mentioned the Commission's chemistry strategy for sustainability published 2 weeks ago. And we support this ambitious strategy very strongly, and it is obvious that the chemical sector alone cannot reach the aim of zero pollution. For that, we need all sectors working together and raise their ambitions in future, as several speakers already emphasized this morning. Amongst others, the Commission strives to get international leadership in the field of chemicals management and to implement instruments in chemicals management to reach the 2030 Agenda goals. Let me take the opportunity just shortly to indicate here the 5th International Conference on Chemicals Management, ICCM 5, to you, which had to be postponed due to COVID pandemic from October 2020 to July 2021. This conference will take place in Bonn, in Germany, under the presidency of Gertrud Sahler. And the conference will be the provisional endpoint of the SICOM process, the strategic approach to international chemicals management, which started already in 2006. Okay, I mentioned this because my panelists are in the one or other way involved in this work, in this international work. And now I come to introduce the two panelists. It's only two. I'm really sorry, but the colleague Pascal Chalvon from Solvay couldn't manage to join us. But we have the very interesting presentations of Gabriele Eigenmann and Thomas Jackel. And we start with Thomas Jackel, who is the Deputy Director General in the Federal Ministry for Climate Action, Environment, Energy, Mobility, Innovation and Technology in Austria. And he is a long-term expert for scientific and governmental questions around chemicals in Europe, with a broad experience in high-level policy positions. Inter alia, he was 4 years serving as ECHA's president, and we appreciate really his excellent support in many projects. And now I would pass over to Thomas Jackel. Unfortunately, we cannot see him. We had some technical problems with this video, but we have his presentation, and I think we can hear him by telephone. So I pass over to Thomas Jackel now.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, and Madam Claassen, it is a pleasure for me to be with you, even in this strange setting, which is due to the chaotic situation we were facing here in Vienna during the last tragic hours. The situation is still blurred and unclear if terrorists are still out there, and we were all said to stay at home. So I have to do this presentation with my mobile device, and I'm very sorry for that, but I'll do my very best to get the message across, ladies and gentlemen, and it's a pleasure for me to be invited, and thanks for Dr. Claassen for giving me the floor. I would like in the next couple of minutes to give you a flavor of the idea of a service-based business model, which has the central message and the central goal to implement resource efficiency within chemicals policy. And let me start by focusing on our preparatory work in 2018 when Austria held the EU presidency of the European Council. And we had for the chemicals program in our presidency two main goals we want to, let's say, launch or initiate or shed light on or put a focus. The first is to raise awareness as to the principles of green chemistry or sustainable chemistry within the whole policy discussion on a circular economy. We thought that the time is right to, let's say, switch from one side of the coin, which is telling us use the right chemicals, to the other side of the coin of chemicals policy saying use chemicals right. That was the aim to launch the political discussion on that issue. And the second goal goes hand in hand with that, to establish issues as renewability of resources, eco-efficiency, substitution, not only in substituting one chemical with the other one, but understanding substitution as a part of innovation, so that if a problematic chemical is to be substituted, it should also be part of the game, not thinking about chemical alternatives, but also of new models, new technologies, such as service-based business models as the pillar of the approach. And we managed at least to launch the political discussion among ministers. They had their first exchange of view on that. And then the subsequent presidencies, Romania, Croatia, and of course Germany, kept the pressure high, kept the issue on the political agenda. And as we already heard a couple of weeks ago, then the European Commission published its chemical strategy for sustainability. And when we take a closer look to this very interesting and innovative text, it is focusing also on business models. It carries, so to say, the spirit which was launched a couple of years before, that it represents really a complete new approach. And business models, focusing on business models, is part of this approach. In the international terminology, there are various terms used for service-oriented business models in the chemicals area, such as chemicals as a service. And what UNIDO, Germany, Switzerland, and Austria went for during the last couple of years was, of course, chemical leasing, which is not always hitting to 100% the essence of the relevant business model, but the essence is that it is a service-oriented approach, that it puts the performance of the product into the center of the business model. Nobody wants to own a chemical product. It's not a prestige to own paints, solvents, greasing oils, or something like that. But it is in the focus that we appreciate the performance and the service generated by those products. And the idea of chemical leasing is now, why not putting also this service, this performance, such as cleaning, coating, and greasing, into the center of the relationship between the producer and the applicant of the chemicals. And while doing so, if the producer of a cleaner is paid per square meter of clean surface, if the producer of a paint is paid per carrosse painted, and if the producer of a greasing oil or a lubricant is paid per per liter or per bottle which is transported on the conveyor belt. So if we put the service in the center of the business relationship, it is by economic means that all participants of the business model lose their economic interest to use and sell as much as chemicals as possible. On the contrary, it's turned upside down. If we put the service in the center, it's an economically driven goal to use chemicals in an efficient way. And if we just put it very bluntly, in the traditional business model, we have a conflict of interest between the supplier and the consumer. Of course, efficiency is part in modern industry, but it is not part of the business relationship in the chemicals area when we focus on the supplier on the one hand, on the consumer on the other hand. If we put the service as the target of this business relationship, then we are paralleling the interests. We have the synchronity of economic goal. And let me focus on examples we gained together with UNIDO during the last 1.5 decades. These are all examples which are really happening, are still working, and they should give a flavor of the essence of chemical leasing. It is important when establishing a business relationship between a producer and the applicant to get a consensus, a common understanding. What is the unit we will formulate the service part in? What is it? What are we trying to achieve? And how can we measure our service-based business model? So in the pilot one, the business partners agreed that the unit of payment, so the service unit, is coated square meter of final products, and they use electrostatic powder coating, and so the supplier is not paid anymore per kilogram of his powder coating sold. I'm sorry, but it was without my contribution. I hope we are back on track. And it is the supplier is not anymore paid per quantity of his product, but of the performance the product is delivering. In this case, per unit, per square meter of final product. Or if we take the example of hydrocarbon solvent, also in Egypt, in automotive industry, it is per produced vehicle that the solvent producer is getting his share. And one very smart example, and these three are mentioned here, are examples where we find already kind of a mainstreaming of chemical leasing in the chemicals industry. These are all very well established examples, which in the one or the other variety are broadly applied already in chemicals industry. And if a chemical producer sells chemicals for wastewater purification, the application of the service-oriented business model here means that the producer is paid per cubic meter of purified water. And if he manages to use less of his product for achieving this goal, it is increasing his economic share. Using less even increases the profitability of the producer. And this is the shift of paradigm, and is the turning upside down of the traditional business relationship. What we saw in many cases, that there are a set of qualitative assets which chemical leasing may deliver. For instance, we saw that there is a combination of know-how of product design and process design. We saw that if those two development units of the producer and the applicant merge in a not physically merge, but they merge their thinking, then we see that there are more components of increasing in intellectuality and increasing innovation. We also saw that technologies or hardware which is too tricky to be placed on the market, as it means high expertise in maintenance. Chemical leasing enables those technology to enter the market because you don't have to sell the device anymore. It might remain within the property of the producer, and therefore we saw both in terms of hardware and also in terms of chemicals innovations entering the market with chemical leasing, which otherwise wouldn't have entered the market. And we saw also that it is the basis for long-lasting business relationships. Critics on chemical leasing say it causes dependencies. Right. If you establish such a close relationship, it is harder to switch to another business partner. But I think the increase in efficiency and in a know-how gain is worth doing it. It is not my influence that the pictures are flopping. I'm trying to put this now on. It should be number 10. And now to the effects, both in terms of resource efficiency, but also in terms of intermediate effects. We saw that already quite well established facilities, by implementing chemical leasing, made quite remarkable efficiency gains. For instance, there is also an instance in Austria between Magna in Upper Austria and Safechem and Perl. Those three companies implemented the chemical leasing model of metal cleaning, and they already before they started, they were quite a benchmark. But after having implemented chemical leasing, they managed to use even 80% less of this solvent because all partners, the business of unit was the cleaned part, and the volume of solvent didn't play any role in the business model. Another example from Renault is they achieved 3/4 reduction of cleaner. The unit here was square meter of treated area, and this is an example I like very much because it gives a flavor what the potential of chemical leasing would be if it is applied throughout a specific area. And these are fascinating figures which demonstrate what the potential would be if a chemical leasing would be mainstreamed in as many application areas as possible. One key success factor and one precondition is that chemicals are accurately monitored, that there is an information exchange between the producer and the applicant, that the producer also gains know-how in the business of the applicant. And so there's the precondition that there are patterns for sharing, cooperation, documentation, and assessment procedure. So we found that those elements which are required to make a successful chemical leasing case are also a precondition for compliance. So we saw that if it's a successful chemical leasing case, as of monitoring applications is quite an easy to the traditional business models. The idea to a feeling about how is the area going, because why should companies tell us authorities that they are successfully implementing this business model? For instance, I only have very limited access to applications cases in Austria. I would love to learn more, but so we had the idea, why not inventing together with our German, Swiss and UNIDO colleagues an award to enhance the visibility of chemical leasing on global scale and show best practices in the application of these business models, and also to acknowledge contributions in order to disseminate chemical leasing. The next chemical leasing award is to be awarded within the margins of ICCN 5, just mentioned by Madam Klaassen. The application period is still open for a couple of weeks, so I would encourage partners listening to be part of this chemical leasing global family. We have 3 main categories and 2 special ones: women-led initiatives and startups. It is striking that chemical leasing, to a very large extent, is a women-driven thing. Women are over proportionally represented in successfully chemical leasing cases, and so we decided also to make a special award category to demonstrate and underline this. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, once again, begging for your indulgence for my limited quality of presence, but it was a pleasure giving this presentation to you, and many thanks for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thomas Jackel, for this presentation and for this very interesting examples for a successful story and new business models. I think there's a huge field for innovation in examples like this. I think we pass over directly to the second presentation, and because we have only 2 presentations, and then we have a discussion after that. So I would ask Gabriela Eigenmann for her presentation. Gabriela Eigenmann is from the United Nations United Nations Industrial Development Organization, and she's a senior industrial development officer. And in the moment, she is in the division for materials and chemicals management. And by the way, she is the UNIDO focal point for SciChem, of the SciChem process, which I mentioned in my introduction. So I welcome Gabriela Eigenmann, and I will pass over to her and her presentation.
Thank you, Madam Klaassen. And welcome to everyone to my presentation. I'm very pleased to have this slot in this forum. Just an overview about my presentation. I would just give you a brief introduction about UNIDO, what we do, who we are. Then also link a little bit our mandate with the EU Green Deal and see where are the overlaps, how we complement each other. And then also give some examples on sustainable chemicals management that also improve the resource efficiency. So next slide. So the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, our mandate is to promote inclusive and sustainable industrial development for creating shared prosperity advanced competitiveness, and with safeguarding the environment. So this mandate is also contributing to the SDG 9 that should be achieved by 2030. We are based in Vienna. Our headquarters is in Vienna, and we are over 50 now years old. Our core work is focused on technical cooperation. So we work with member states to achieve this goal. In the technical cooperation, we have our, generally speaking, 4 areas we work. There is digitalization, innovation, and trade. It's one area we focus. Then we have the agribusiness. Further, we have energy, an energy department, and then also the environment department. From different angles, we work with countries to achieve sustainable industrial development. And we do that through different means. We provide policy advice. We also engage in research and analytical function. But we also work on standards. And a very key part of our work is also to facilitate knowledge, but also technologies and best practices. And over all these years, we have established a very broad network of partners. Germany is one of our main partners, also Austria, and as we heard from Thomas Jackel. But we work a lot with private sector as well. Now it switched back. I didn't do anything. Okay, we are here with private sector, but also with civil society and academia. So UNIDO and the EU Green Deal, as I said, we support the achievement of SDG 9, but we also work towards SDG 12, where it's about sustainable consumption and production, but then we specifically work to achieve target 12.2 and 12.4, which talks about sustainable management of chemicals and sustainable management and efficient use of natural resources as well. And as mentioned by Thomas Jackel and Madame Klassen, the SAICM goal is also enshrined in this target, and that means environmental sound management of chemicals should be ensured throughout their life cycle already by end of this year. So, but then the EU Green Deal, as we understand, it's the new growth strategy. It has a sustainable chemical strategy, as explained by Thomas Jackel, but it has also part of it is action plan on circular economy. So overall, we think we overlap with our mandate. The Green Deal also wants to support to achieve the sustainable development goals entirely, not only 9 and 12. And that's actually also our aim when we work with countries. But today I would like to focus on these 2 only. So now more specific sustainable management or sustainable chemistry in UNIDO. As I mentioned, I work in the Department of Environment. There we take the approach from the environmental perspective. We try to work with countries taking a circular economy approach so that we not only focus on one specific chemical in a certain part of the life cycle, but we try to manage it from the start when it's designed until the end when it's disposed of. We as well work in the framework of multilateral environmental agreement in the chemicals and waste management sector, such as the Basel Convention, Stockholm, Rotterdam, and Minamata Convention and SAICM. We work with countries to support them to implement it. So that is the key of sustainable chemical management. And I would like just to give you 3 examples of our work, some concrete examples of projects and programs where we find an interlink between the chemicals management and the resource efficiency and also the cleaner production. So one is more on innovation. The other one is the chemical leasing. I think I would just have another example and to concretize what Mr. Thomas Jakel has said. And then also the green chemistry projects we have implemented or we just started to implement. So let me start with one example that talks about innovation solution for chemicals. So it was a project financed by the government of Switzerland, where it was called IMC, Innovative Approach for Sustainable Management of Chemicals and Waste. The aim was really to develop a methodology how such innovation can be identified, then also train people how to use that methodology, and have a toolkit at the end that can be used and still is used, not only by the chemical industry, but any other people who are involved in this area. So it's about innovation, it's about identifying innovation, but also applying them in the next step. So what does it mean concretely? There was a company that was looking for a better solution. They had a huge consumption of steam, a company in the textile industry in El Salvador. They had also high consumption of water and chemicals, and actually they were looking to enhance the material and energy efficiency to increase productivity. So that was the overall gain of them. And they also realized that they have a high waste generation in their dyeing sector, dyeing of the textiles. So they used this methodology to find where is the hotspot. So they identified the technology that is used in dyeing that was mainly in charge or mainly the cause of all this high use of resources and chemicals. So they found a new technology that replaced the old one, that was a so-called dyeing jet, and they helped them not only to increase the production, they also reduced the dyeing time, they reduced the amount of chemical used, and they also had a remarkable reduction of fuel and water consumption. And finally, as well, the working conditions were improved in this textile company. The investment was 35,000, but they have now an annual saving of more than $7,000. Next, then the chemical leasing. I think Thomas Jakel has explained it very well. So it's a business-based model that is behind this approach. I would just like to mention there is a webinar specifically on the award, how you can apply on the award next week on 12th November. If you want to attend, you just send me an email. I can guide you, or you can go on the chemical leasing website. This award and the chemical leasing project is a project we work with Austria, with Germany, and with Switzerland. I might just skip the example because we have here it. I just would like to mention on these examples that was chemical leasing approach was used in a laundry. company in the laundry sector, that it's not only resource efficient and it's not only about sustainable chemical management. If we look at the impact, we have really all pillars of sustainable development that are target. So we have impacts at the environmental level, we have an impact at an economic level, and we have also social impacts. So they reduce the resources, water, energy, chemicals. But there's also a business case, which is always important to scale up and to introduce such innovations. And at the end, there are also social benefits, which we distribute in their working condition. And this is a pattern we see in many application of chemical leasing. Then we have the Global Green Chemical Initiative, where we actually have kind of two parts we work on. So a first part, we increase the global awareness on the green chemistry approach, and developed also tools to raise the awareness. And we had several sessions where we trained people. We partnered with different countries, mainly with cleaner production centers in Colombia, Egypt, Serbia, in South Africa, and Sri Lanka. But we had also business partners in Brazil, and one of our major partners in this area is the Yale University. So that this was kind of a first step. Our project was supported by the GEF, the Global Environment Facility, and just came to an end. And built on this work, we have now kind of a second project in green chemistry, where we work now directly with countries in Indonesia, Jordan, Peru, Serbia, Uganda, and Ukraine. So it builds on what we did in the previous project, but now we really want to accelerate this. We want to scale up the use of green chemistry technologies, and there we focus, since it's again financed by the Global Environment Facility. We have to focus on certain multilateral environment agreements. So we look for alternatives for POPs, mercury, and microplastic, taking this green chemistry approach. So we're just in an initial phase where we refine the project document. So we hope to start the implementation next year or end of the next year. But the idea is really to scale up now this idea in green chemistry in different regions to different small and medium enterprises, which are our major partners. Then, yes, this brings me already to the conclusion. I think sustainable chemicals management can ensure the efficient use of chemical products, but also of chemicals in processes. They normally improve industry's environmental performance and also the occupational health and safety, as I mentioned, as we have seen in different examples. Designing and using safe or non-hazardous chemicals in industry also contribute to the circular approach, which is very important for UNIDO, but also for the EU. Sound chemicals management and resource efficiency are both key elements for our mandate for inclusive and sustainable industrial development. They are essential for the transition to a circular economy or green economy, how you want to name it. And we facilitate this transition through different entry points. As I said, we facilitate the use of innovative approaches, such as chemical leasing, also following the 12 principles of the green chemistry. But also and that includes also the design, not only the management. But we also facilitate the transfer of cleaner and resource-efficient production technologies and practices in different sectors. So we have also projects in the textile sector. We work also with countries to replace in the plastic management sector. So this is just to mention. What we see as a challenge upcoming challenge is really further scale up the sustainable chemistry approach, that it's not remained in certain remains applicable in certain small and medium enterprises, but scale up it at regional and also at national level, and still also increase the visibility of the benefits of sustainable management of chemicals. Because as we heard also from Thomas Jackel, it's a trigger, it facilitates much more than only the sustainable management of chemicals. It has impact in different areas, and it really assists us to take a circular economy, a life cycle approach to address several problems, addressing all the three pillars of the sustainable development. So that's from my side. Thank you for your attention, for listening. If you have questions, you can reach me by email. And as I said, there is a webinar on 12th November if you want to learn more about chemicals, the Chemical Leasing Award and chemical leasing as such. And then next year, hopefully, I see many of you at the ICCM 5, where we have the Chemical Leasing Award. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriela, for your presentation and this interesting insights in the work of UNIDO and your division. I have one short question concerning the chemical industry. What do you think? Do the really big players in this chemical businesses adequately perceive their role in this development of innovative concepts and new techniques, or do they leave this too much to so-called startups or to small companies? What is your impression to that?
Thank you for the question. I mean, as I said, we from UNIDO, we traditionally work with small and medium enterprises. So we see that there are our major partners, but when we see also big companies, I think they take their role. They're often also bound to some regulations that are stronger or more stringent than in the country they maybe have their companies. So we see that, but we also see that many startups pave the way for innovations. So that are then our partners. They pave the way for innovation. They introduce innovations such as we still consider chemical leasing. In chemical leasing, we have many of such innovations already seen. So I think it depends a little bit from which perspective we see, and also it depends a little bit how the big companies are organized. If they're franchised, it's a different case if they're not.
Thank you for answering this question. We have two questions in the chat, which I would like to read and maybe address to Thomas Jackel. I hope he's still online. So concerning the European policy, maybe the question is, what is the biggest challenge to implementing sustainable chemistry in policy? I ask whether Thomas Jackel is still in the line. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't read this information that Thomas Jackel is not online anymore. He will answer the questions. He will write give written answers. But there's another question from Klaus Steinhäuser. What is the ultimate goal? Continuous economic growth with efficient use of resources? Consider the rebound effect, or do change lifestyle with less consumption sufficiency? That's an interesting question, and maybe I'll give this question to Gabriela Eigenmann, because it's a question interesting for UNIDO.
Thank you, and it's the very heart, I think, of our discussion, and I think it's where we have to go, and that's what we also see from hear from our partners in developing countries and countries with economies in transition. They need more examples that work for this zero growth approach, or how you want to call it. I mean, at the end, we can reach. We have to probably change. We have to change how we live, and that's the most difficult things to change people's ability or people's way of life. So what would be helpful, I think, because many countries we work maybe are in a different status than the European companies, but to have more exchange on success stories. And I think there are companies I know that apply this approach. Maybe there are even countries, and also the European Union with the EU Green Deal goes in this direction. So we need good examples. We give good examples that we can share with our partners, and then adjust to the specific context they're in. But I definitely agree, we have to change our lifestyle. We have to learn to share. We have to learn to be more modest, I think, in the long term. And that's a long journey, but we have to start.
Thank you, Gabriela, for this statement. And I think I have to close this session because we have to stay in time. But in the end, I come back to our two questions from the beginning. And there's the answers to question 2. I think it's a quite clear political statement, because 86% of you answered that you do favor an inclusion of negative environmental and social costs of resource use in the price of products and services. So 86% voted yes, we want this. And that's a nice statement in the end. And thank you very much for joining us in this session. And I wish you a good next session and a good conference the whole day today. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.